Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather. Preston couldn't be here today, but together we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today's guest has a gift for untangling what slows teams down, not in years, but in weeks. We're excited to welcome Simon Copsey, a delivery and transformation consultant who helps senior leaders pinpoint and resolve complex organizational dysfunctions. His superpower, turning messy problems into practical progress using a mix of systems thinking, the scientific method, and real world experience across product engineering and management. Simon's career spans everything from full stack development to transformation consulting. He's supported major organizations through high stakes change, coached early stage startups, and talked on how teams can get out of their own way. He brings both technical credibility and people centered insight, and he's not afraid to share hard won lessons, including his own failures in management. Simon, I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's either the scientific method or the learning from failure. Those are two of my favorite topics. I'm excited to dig in. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Geez, that sounds like you made me sound great. You have the kiss of the gab, JL. Thank you. I'm going to try and live up to that.
I'm sure you will. And it's nothing that we didn't see in the information you sent us, your bios, all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure it is all well deserved. To start off, I think maybe the best place to go is with a scientific method because you've talked about how you use the scientific method in your approach to change. So I'm curious, like, how does that come to life and how does that differ from maybe some of the more traditional transformation playbooks that are out there?
Yeah, that's a good question, JL. Anything I say that sounds good comes from Goldratt, particularly at this point. Anything that doesn't sound good is just me. So I realize Goldratt, brought in the theory of constraints as a way of trying to bring the hard science to social sciences, organizational change, and other things as well. And a lot of what that gives us, particularly the thinking processes, which are just a way of being a doctor to an organization, saying you have all these symptoms, but they tend to be caused by one thing. It's just a way of kind of taking you through that process visually, so you can make sure that as you diagnose, you build up this mental model with other people from the organization. And that's your hypothesis, right? You come up with a mental model of the organization, you come up with an underlying cause of all the problems you're seeing, and then you target it. But that becomes your hypothesis. You believe by tackling this, you'll create this relief, and you'll know this in this way. That's my nutty way. And I realize I'm talking to more of an expert here, so I'm curious what comes up for you as I say that, yeah.
Well, so The Goal, amazing book, right? Like Elijah Goldratt, he's got some great information there. He has another book out there too that's pretty good.
Mhm.
But I love it. But I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, when you look at what you're talking about there, that scientific method of hypothesis testing, testing that hypothesis, how do you see that differing from what maybe listeners have seen in that traditional transformation playbook?
That's a good question. I didn't answer that part. Yeah, no, thank you for the nudge. Yeah, so I think, and tell me, I'm curious on your response. In my because I definitely, all I know is I know nothing, right? So I only see a certain a part of the world. What I believe, the traditional approach, the approach I was probably educated in, the bit that, my original approach would be as a manager, as a transformation consultant, there's always lots of things wrong in an organization, things that don't feel right. And I guess there's two things there. One is not all those problems are equal, but the way we would traditionally encourage to tackle them is in isolation, ranking based on impact versus cost. And the second thing is that, and with the preconception that tackling any of those will take us closer to our goal equally. And I guess the second thing is that we treat those as problems in themselves as opposed to symptoms of the underlying cause. We don't think of them as bad smells coming from somewhere. We spray air freshener to get rid of them as opposed to say, hey, well, where's that smell coming from? All right. So, and both of those come back to problems not being simple point to point kind of single things that work in isolation. They come back to problems being messy and intertwined, as Akoff reminds us a great deal. So that's the main thing. I think to try and summarize, because I think out loud and I appreciate that the space you give me, we treat problems in isolation and we treat them as causes as well as effects. And I don't think that quite works. I failed by doing that. What comes up for you?
No, I love that. And I think, we started with the scientific method and we're kind of continuing in that vein because we're starting to think about the difference between closed systems and open systems, complex systems and simple systems. And what I hear you saying is consultants tend to come in saying, this feels like a simple closed system. If I fix this problem, it will give us this result. And that's just not true. Because in complex open systems, we don't know all the variables. And we can't say if I pull this lever, this thing will happen. All we know is if we pull this lever, we will change the system and things will change. And we hope that we have some sort of control over what that change is. I think when I think about the difference between traditional transformation, consultants in general, they tend to come in and say, here's the answer. Here's the framework. If you just do this, you'll be fine. What I hear you saying is, no, 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 no. There is no silver bullet, but there are a lot of root causes that if we can find those and solve those, the system as a whole will be healthier.
I'm writing, so I have a bad memory. My excuse is I'm a recent father, but actually I just have a bad memory. And you said so many good things. So, okay. Mm. So, four things that came up for me. So the first one is I believe that there is. I was thinking about this today actually when I was jogging. I believe there is a silver bullet or something closer to a silver bullet in most circumstances. And I'm keen to disagreements bring forward new information for me. That's how I learn. So I'm keen to hear your view on that. The second thing was what I kind of omitted is that every system should have a goal, as you know, probably better than me, through the definition of a system. An organization, and often organizations don't at least have a single, clear, understood goal, and that's what the problem is.
Right.
But that's when we're looking at the problems you want to tackle, we want to understand which are the ones that are getting in the way of the goal. And typically, what we'll find is those problems or the symptoms tend to go back to just a few, maybe one or two or three underlying causes. And those are the things that we can tackle. So we can actually get a lot of focus. We can kind of tackle all these symptoms, create widespread relief just by focusing on a few problems. And so the final thing is, I don't believe organizations are complex in most circumstances. And the reason for that is because I think there's, cause and effect change. We know from Daniel Pink, right, looking in the top right from your side of your bookcase that, he helps us understand that in most cases, staff don't be intrinsically motivated if they don't have purpose, mastery, and autonomy, the conditions for those to emerge. So we know from Deming that if you incentivize staff to achieve a given target and you put their job on the line for not achieving it, then they'll ruin the organization to get there if necessary. So there's certain cause and effect change that remain static. But organizations seem complex, but they can't because we created them, but they seem complex. And the way of kind of, I guess, seeing through the complexity, seeing the simplicity behind the complexity is if you know what your goal is, what you're trying to maximize for, what you're trying to optimize for, and you know the underlying causes of the problems, it allows you to kind of restrict your view to just a few things. I think at the end of the goal, Ellie Goldrat was talking about that when he's talking about the whiteboard and stuff. So I think that means that what seems complex is actually often very simple. But I said a lot, sorry. So I talked about a goal. I talked about how I believe actually complex actually is more simple with the right framing. And I talked about a challenge there about, is this really a silver bullet or not? What comes up for you, Joe?
No, I love that because I think when I look at the organizational system with all the people involved, and I think about what your traditional consultant says, they say, if you follow our method, this will be the outcome. I believe that's impossible to tell for sure. So, and I think part of that is because like you take one human, that's already a complex system
Yeah.
from a certain perspective. But I agree, if we're going to actually pursue organizational transformation and change, we do have to find a simplified view, which is more of the what are the causes of some of the dysfunctions that are getting in your way. And by simplifying that view, you're to some extent discarding some of the, I don't want to say irrelevant data to simplify the system. But the other thing I hear you saying is you're not saying if we do this, this is the exact outcome. What we are saying is if we do these things, things will get better. And that's a very different thing, right? Because in a complex system, we can say like, hey, if we let's just take the human body. All right, there is something going on. We think it is something that an antibiotic will help with, right? So we can insert that antibiotic. The system as a whole will improve, but it may also kill off some of the helpful stuff in your gut as well, which may make digestion hard. So we did improve the system, but we had an unintended consequence. And I think when I think about complex systems, anything we do will hopefully move the needle in the way we want, but there will also be unintended consequences. So in transformation, that could be people leaving. It could be people feeling like their job is disappearing. Any number of things could happen that are unintended. So that's why I hesitate to ever classify an organization as a simple system, because I think the law of unintended consequences is probably going to bite you pretty hard if you're not careful.
You can see me scribbling. So much came up. I like that. I love this. And if we think about the human body, that's a really good example. Before I actually go there, I think so. Goldratt in one of his books, The Choice, I think it was, he was talked about how scientists can't predict the path of any given electron, but
Right.
they can statistically say most electrons would react in this way under these circumstances. The same with
Yep.
organizations. We can't predict what any one person could do, but law of larger numbers, we can say that generally in these conditions, this will generally occur. And the same with human bodies, you put really elegantly, right? We can say if we give you this antibiotic, in most cases, it will be the right one because we know in this case, these are not resistant to most bacteria. Most bacteria aren't resistant to the antibiotic. So you should be okay. But we can never
Right.
say for certain. And I think Feynman, I can't remember the word he uses, but he says, scientists always exist in uncertainty. And even before that, they first exist in an area of, I can't remember the word he uses, but like unlikely. But then as he goes
Yeah.
through and he builds confidence, they get to a point of uncertain. And that's the final resting place. And it's just the question of how long until my law is disproved. Like Einstein, not Einstein, and Newton.
Right.
Newton went so long. He was never, his law of gravity was never right, but it was good enough. It was fantastic. He's amazing, one of the best scientists. But it was always right until it's proven wrong. Even then, it was always tentative, right? Same with all of this. Organizations, I believe, have inherent simplicity, but are uncertain because of the stuff. But if we look at things in a large kind of zoomed out perspective about what would likely happen in this case, I think we have a good. I'm going to pause for a second. Did that make enough sense before I move on to a few other things that you said? Is that okay?
No, I think so. And I like what you're saying. I think the idea of one, the thing that came up for me, I don't know if you're an Isaac Asimov fan, The Foundation, Harry Seldon,
Yes,
like he
yes, yes.
predicts
I've
the
read the first one.
future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he
Spot
can
on.
only do it for humanity as a whole.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
can
yeah,
only do it
yeah,
if his predictions are not known. Like
yeah.
as soon as people
Beautiful,
know what his predictions are,
beautiful.
they go off. It
Yes.
is one of those things where I think the more, how do I want to say it? We can always find some ways to talk about big numbers and be predictable
Mm,
as long as we're not super concerned about being 100% accurate.
yeah, that makes.
And I think
I think I don't know.
that's where the value comes in.
Ooh, I'm just gonna turn the lights on because this looks very Halloween. Forgive me. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think we can be, what's the word? Not precise, but accurate. I can't remember the way around
Right.
that goes.
No, I know what
Like,
you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But in that life is variation. Variation is life. There will always be variation. We won't be able to predict things, but we can become increasingly good at predicting things if our systems are stable. But I'm going on a tangent. But yes, I agree with what you say there, and the link to the foundation series is phenomenal. Yes, that feels very right. The other things you said, yes, businesses aren't deterministic. They are uncertain. They always will be. The human body is the same. I think, yeah, no. Oh, and there's one tool that I quite like, which is because you said unintended consequences, right? There's one tool in the theory of constraints that I just want to point to. We don't have to go there because it's probably a bit of a tangent. It's a bit of an outlier, which is the future reality tree, which is, maybe better than me, is a way of kind of almost simulating the future uh, uh, and debugging it with other people. So you can say,
Right.
if we do this, if we inject this change here, given these circumstances that we already agreed exist, we believe this will happen. Does that feel right? Yeah, cool. What are all the things that could otherwise happen as well that we also need to kind of inject and guard ourselves against? What comes up for you, Joe?
No, I love that. I think, there's a lot of tools that we have as coaches and consultants to help people do that in terms of like SWOT analysis, pre-mortems. If you've never seen or read the transcript of Mary Poppendike's Tyranny of the Plan,
Really?
it is absolutely a masterclass
Oh,
on why deterministic planning isn't super effective, and we need something that's more probabilistic and more adaptive. I think it is like, I don't know. We could continue this conversation for like an
yeah.
hour because I could dig into all these things. Maybe one way to kind of bring this more to a close is to focus on some of the misconceptions we see in this space. So maybe what are some of the what is the biggest or most concerning misconception that you see leaders holding on to that you wish they could unlearn when they're trying to create change?
That's good. Yeah, so I'm writing down. You're making me think. So if you come up, I think the one that you just pointed to, right, which is a strategy versus a plan, if I understand correctly, which is, plan is what are we going to do to get us, move us forward, whereas a strategy, as I understand it, actually, I'm not going to use the word strategy. That's a bit dangerous, I think. But the other way of working backwards is working backwards from the goal and working out what are the conditions we need to create to enable this or give it the best chance of it happening. And that, for me, feels better because there's multiple ways of creating any one condition. And if one way of creating that condition fails, we can try another one. But at least that way, we know what we're aiming for. To use another term, outcome, right? So, for example, if we need to make sure that the conditions for intrinsic motivation are there, how can we do that? there's more than one way. And if we have a plan, it makes us select individual methods. As you say, it's reductive. It closes our mind to other ways of getting there. Whereas if we work backwards and talk in terms of conditions or outcomes to get us more of the goal, it allows us to be more open, and it allows us to bring in the staff so they can think about the tactics that they want to choose to get there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's I guess a prevalent approach where managers create, maybe give more information about where the organization is trying to go. Staff have a better understanding of why it is where it is, and the two never meet. Whereas if we can bring those two things together by using something like a goal tree or some way of saying these are the conditions we need to get there. This is why we think this to be true. You guys understand more than we do in certain areas, and we understand a bit more in other areas. If we bring this together, we can probably create a plan that's not just taking us to where we think we want to go, but is also feasible. That's cool, right? So difference of a plan versus strategy, or kind of outcomes versus solutions. And the other one is two more. Particularly, humans are good. I have, as a manager, one of the reasons I failed was because I succumbed to what's it called? Fundamental attribution bias, right? I was like, if they failed, it's because they're bad, as opposed to if they failed, it's just the circumstances. And as a manager, who creates the circumstances? Me. It was my fault they failed, right? So it was a vicious cycle. And the other one is efficiency syndrome, right? One of the things that we learn, and I learned particularly late on, is that there's a belief that if we keep everyone busy, we'll deliver more in any given period. It's not true. We go from, to use the terms of Philip Maris, we go from roads to parking lots. Everything gets jam-packed. Right? So sorry, I gave you three there. If we think in terms of, I'm going to rephrase them as I go through as well. If we think in terms of problems versus solutions, there's always more solutions that we can consider. If we only think in terms of solutions, there's always one way forward. It locks us in. The second one is humans are good. And it's only by believing that we can start to question what they know that we don't, and we find a better way forward. The world is complex. And the final one is efficiency syndrome. We want to avoid parking lots and increase kind of motorways. What comes after you?
I love all of those. And I think we could have a whole nother episode on each one. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But Simon, we do have to wrap up. What's a great way for people to get into contact with you if they want to learn more?
Appreciate that. So I have a website, curiouscoffee.club, not .com. I should have gone for that, but .club. Come say hello. You can book a virtual coffee. I just like to learn from others and have discussions. And there's a free book there for people who want to understand how we can help organizations get out their own way.
Well, again, Simon, this has been absolutely fantastic. I appreciate your time so much. For everyone else who's made it all the way to the end with us, while you're down there leaving that 5-star review, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you think within the transforming organizations. Is it a complex system? Is it a simple system? Are there silver bullets? What are the common root causes? Let us know what you're thinking, and we'd love to hear from you. And then if you know anyone who could benefit from Simon's insights on the goal, Elijah Goldratt, and all the systems theory that we've been talking about throughout, share the episode with them. This has been an amazing conversation, Simon. So I hope this goes far. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.